Activity 10, Transportation Exploration. In New Hanover County, we have a large busing system that gets our students to and from school and to and from field trip experiences. I was lucky enough to discuss our transportation department with Dave Bittner, one of the transportation managers. During our discussions, I asked Mr. Bittner what the safety drills that are practiced on a bus are, and he told me that bus evacuation drills are mandatory for all drivers, bus aides, and riders. EC buses have safety equipment training, but not really a drill. The difference between a school bus for everyone and an EC bus can be the size and the amount of students on the bus. I asked Mr. Bittner how many supervisors are there in the transportation department. He said technically there are 2 supervisors that are titled as such, but there are a total of 9 supervisory type positions, which means we have 9 people that do the work of supervisors, but there's only 2 employees with a supervisor title. I asked how many people were employed in the transportation department, including supervisors, drivers, and mechanics. He said that there are approximately 200 employees in all in the transportation department. I asked if the drivers were trained in discipline issues. Mr. Bittner responded yes, but not as nearly as trained as teachers who have gone through a degree program. This relates to some of the issues that they're having in transportation currently. I asked Mr. Bittner what are the current issues that you're dealing with in transportation, and he said that this is incredibly similar to being a principal with a national driver shortage, student discipline issues, but they have buses breaking down, they have employee absenteeism, and they have to manage their budget correctly. They also have to have employee performance issues across position types, so if they're having difficulties with an employee, they may not advance into the next role. He said another big part of this is the aging white vehicle fleet. So New Hanover County has the yellow buses and they have the white buses, right? He said the white buses are not funded by the state, they're funded locally. Okay, so this is an issue they're having with keeping these buses running because they're funded by the state, or excuse me, they're funded locally and not by the state with funds. He also said the EC population is rising versus the number of EC drivers and buses. So as the EC population rises, they don't have enough drivers and buses for those EC students. He says this is a long list of items they're having issues with. A more specific example of issues, though, is the aging of the fleet of white buses and the more and more maintenance they need. And since those are funded at a local level, at a district level, they don't have all of the finances to get those fixed. He said a new full-size bus costs roughly $150,000, and this can be the biggest need with this is getting the buses, but also getting more drivers. But you have to have funding to attract and retain skilled trade positions, and current salaries in New Hanover County are below the current market or the state market. So the big issue is you have aging buses, you don't have enough money to fix the buses, there is a lack of money to buy new buses, and when they have the new buses, they don't have the amount of drivers they need because they're not paying them what they are at the going rate. He said another example of issues that schools are having with transportation, or rather transportation is having with schools, is that schools sometimes have poor dismissal procedures. It takes a long time to get the kids on the buses, to get the kids going off the buses, and then a lack of response with those student referrals. And that goes back to my piece a minute ago I talked about bus drivers being trained in student discipline. He said there's been issues with a responses to bus referrals, and what that means is a bus driver can give a student a bus referral, the school will get it, and the administration and teacher will kind of take care of that bus referral. He says the problem is they are unaware of if the bus referrals are seen by the administration and if there's consequences or not, right? So they don't know if the consequences have been given out to the students that have received the bus referrals, if the administration has done anything about them. He said oftentimes they're unaware if there was follow through done or not. He said another big problem is the lack of school staff to supervise students during dismissal procedures. He says they have a really great partnership with the schools, but there's just not enough staff to be outside dismissing students to the buses, which can cause issues like loitering, kids walking around, or kids maybe even elementary school not even getting on the correct bus, as sometimes there's more than one bus. The annual cost of maintenance for the bus department, he says, with fuel is around $2.1 million for fuel and buses. The annual cost with personnel can be as high as $6.4 million. So at that budget, you're in the millions of dollars. There's not a lot of money to get the new buses. And the big issue is the school does depend on those white buses that they have, but since they're breaking down, they're having to try to purchase new buses for that without getting those more funds because they're not from the state, they come from local funds. The annual costs for training and safety that they pay, he said it changes year to year depending on what's going on, but usually about $20,000 is how much they spend on training and safety. He says some vendors will offer training for free when they're able, but about $20,000 to have that safety training. I would say, along with Mr. Bittner's points, throughout this internship, a lot of the issues that we've had were kind of in the same wheelhouse about bus referrals and bus driver communication. I personally handled some bus referrals, and I went out myself and told the bus driver that had been taken care of, and they thanked me for that because they said that's not always the case. But administration doesn't always have time to go out and touch base with the bus driver in the morning or after school, as both of these people have places to be. The administration needs to be in the building, getting the kids in there, and the bus drivers are going on to the next middle school or high school to pick up or drop off those students. But we have these same issues with the bus referral process and making sure the communication is clear and letting the parents know so they understand the expectations on the bus. I really do think that some of the current issues are going to be student discourse on the bus, student behavior on the bus, and I think if students behave better on the bus, there would be more bus drivers applying for the jobs, because a lot of times this can be viewed as a very difficult position. So in our school, we really work with the students and make them understand that riding the bus is a privilege, not a requirement, and it can be lost if you are not able to abide by the rules. As I've navigated through this internship, I have had a few experiences myself riding the bus to and from field trips, and the bus drivers I've noticed more often than not will stay at the field trip, and this can be for 6 to 7 hours, and I've often wondered why that is, but it is in case of emergency, in case we have to leave. But I think as an administrator, a future administrator, as I work more and more with the transportation department, I do have inquiries about how to better utilize those drivers' times rather than having them sit there. However, that is a issue that they have been discussing for a long time, is how to have field trips and also have a bus driver on standby in case there is an emergency. So with a shortage of bus drivers and an aging fleet, it would be advantageous to find a way during field trips where bus drivers could still be available for use throughout the school day. Overall, I really appreciated Mr. Bittner's time as he gave me a lot of insight and information into the transportation department, and overall it was a great experience.